What if I told you that Hansel and Gretel was never about two children lost in the forest, but about you discovering that the one who was supposed to feed you was the one who first abandoned you hungry? What if that candy house wasn't salvation, but the cruelest trap in life? The promise that you can have it all, as long as you give yourself completely. Take a deep breath. Feel the weight of this story, because it's not about 19th century children starving to death in Europe. It's about you now, as an adult, still trying to understand why you never feel enough, why you're always looking for something to fill the void, because when you finally find abundance, you always suspect there's a catch, a hidden price. Let's go. Hansel and Gretel start out at home, with parents who don't have enough food. The stepmother suggests, let's get rid of the children. The father resists weakly, but gives in. And on a moonlit night, the two children are taken into the middle of the forest and abandoned. The first time, Hansel leaves white pebbles along the path. They return. The second time, the stepmother locks the door, so Hansel uses breadcrumbs. The birds eat them, and there's no turning back. Lost, hungry, exhausted, they find an impossible salvation, a house made of sweet bread, cakes, and sugar windows. And they do what any starving child would do. They devour the walls. But from inside the house comes a kind old woman who invites them in. She feeds them. She cuddles them. And when they fall asleep, they feel satisfied, peaceful, and think they're in heaven. But they are wrong. It's hell. The old woman is a witch. The house is bait. John wakes up in a cage. Mary, enslaved. The boy will be fattened until he becomes food. The girl will work until she is roasted in the oven. And here's the truth no one tells you. The witch and the wicked stepmother are the same person. Both want to devour the children, one through abandonment, the other through possession. But the result is the same. The children exist, according to them, to be consumed. Have you ever experienced this? Have you ever been loved in a way that made you feel consumed? Have you ever felt that your existence only had value when it served someone else's appetite? Have you discovered that whoever fed you also drained you until there was nothing left? Hansel and Gretel must eliminate a witch to survive. And when they do, their stepmother dies too. Because you can't grow up without killing the devouring versions of your parental figures that live inside you. This is the story of how to stop being food, and finally learn to feed yourself but alone. The story begins with hunger. It's not a metaphorical hunger for affection or attention. It's literally a hunger for a family of poor lumberjacks without enough food for everyone. And the stepmother suggests the most logical solution at the time. Get rid of the children. 2 fewer mouths to feed means 2 adults who would survive longer. Oh, Father, he protests. But he's weak, a failure. And he gives in. Because that's what many do when resources are scarce. They choose their own survival. And while this seems monstrous today, it was a common reality in medieval Europe. During this time, children ate leftovers, and parents helped themselves first. And in times of extreme scarcity, children were discarded. But here's what the story doesn't openly tell. Abandonment isn't just due to lack of food, but also discomfort, weight, responsibility they no longer want to carry. The stepmother doesn't say, "We have no food." She says, "We need to get rid of them," like getting rid of a problem, like getting rid of something unnecessary. And the father who should be the defender, he gives in. Because deep down he wants that too. He's also tired. He'd also prefer the peace of mind of taking care of himself. Do you record this dynamic? It doesn't have to be literally abandoned in the woods. It could be emotional. It could be a family that made you feel like you were too much work, that your needs were burdens. Which would be easier if you simply didn't need anything. How many times have you been told, directly or indirectly, that you were asking for too much, that you were too sensitive, that you were too much work, that you were too expensive? And learn to make yourself small, to ask for less, to be hungry in silence. In his first attempt to abandon himself, João leaves little white stones along the path. He chose favorable parents. He didn't sleep because he was hungry. And when he was taken to the forest, he marked the way back. The white pebbles are his first act of autonomy, his first refusal to be discarded. He didn't passively accept the fate his parents had decided. He fought, and they return home, where they are not greeted with acceptance, but with irritated resignation, as if they were disrupting a plan that was good for everyone. On the second attempt, the stepmother locks the door. Hansel can't pick up pebbles, so he uses breadcrumbs. the only resource he still has. But the birds eat them, and now there's no turning back. The crumbs represent something profound, the fragile resources that abandoned children build to feel safe. If I'm good, they won't abandon me. If I'm not a problem, they'll want me. If I'm perfect, they'll love me. But those crumbs are always devoured by reality, by the discovery that no matter how perfect you are, parents who want to abandon you will always find a reason. And when your survival strategies fail, you're lost. No map, no way back. Just like Hansel and Gretel in the woods. The forest isn't just a geographic place. It's the world outside your home when you don't yet have the inner resources to navigate it alone. It's the helplessness of those who were cast out too soon. It's the loneliness of those who grew up without a safety net. And they walked for days, hungry, exhausted, desperate. And then they find a candy house. Do you understand what this means? After so long being hungry, so long without care, so long believing that the world is hostile, they find the impossible. A home made of food, sweet bread walls, cake ceiling, sugar windows, and they do what any hungry child would do. They devour it. No guilt, no hesitation, just your hunger finally being satisfied. But every abundance after scarcity comes with a price, and the price here is devastating. An old woman comes out of the house, kind, welcoming, motherly. She didn't kick them out for coming to her house. She invited them in. She provided them with plenty of food. She tucked them into soft beds, and they slept, thinking they were finally safe. This scene should be salvation, but it's a prelude to the worst nightmare, because the old woman is not what she seems. She's a witch, and the house isn't a bounty, it's bait, a tried and true method of capturing vulnerable children. The next morning, John wakes up caged, Mary awake, screaming to work, and the fantasy is over. The reality is revealed. They were not saved. They were captured. And here's the cruelest psychological twist. The witch wants to fatten up Hansel so she can eat him. She feeds him obsessively. She checks every day to see if he's getting any fatter. She wants to turn him into a perfect delicacy. Do you see the perversion and the irony? The same things that were lacking in your home, food, care, attention, are now offered in excess, but not out of love, but rather possession, with the intention of consuming. The witch represents the dark side of relationships, a mother who nurtures not to liberate, but to imprison, who cares not to strengthen, but to weaken, who loves not so that her child grows, but so that he remains eternally a baby, eternally dependent, eternally hers. How many mothers don't do this? Not literally, but emotionally. They feed their children guilt, dependence, with the subliminal message, "You will never be able to live without me. You need me. You are mine." And the son, starved of affection, accepts, because any attention seems better than abandonment. Any possessive love seems better than loneliness. João caged represents every child trapped in a symbiotic dynamic with a devouring mother. He is constantly fed but cannot move. He cannot grow. He cannot explore the world. He exists only to satisfy the appetite of whoever keeps him imprisoned. And Mary? Maria is forced to work, to serve, to be an accomplice to her own destruction and that of her brother. Because she cooks the food that fattens João. She keeps the household running. She sustains the system that will eventually devour another child. Doesn't this sound so familiar? Have you ever been the child who had to keep the family working? Who worked emotionally to keep their parents happy? Who gave up childhood to become a precocious adult? Every day the witch asks Jack to show her his finger to see if he's gained weight. But Jack is clever. He shows her a small bone he saved. He tricks the witch by pretending to be thin. This gesture is revolutionary. It's the first refusal, the first autonomy, the first time João says no to the person feeding him. Because closing the mouth is a baby's first act of rebellion. Refusing food is refusing control. It's saying, "My body is mine, my hunger is mine, you don't decide what goes into me." How many kids do this? They refuse to eat as a way to regain power in dynamics where everything is controlled by their parents. It's not a whim. It's a war for autonomy. The witch eventually loses her patience. She decides to eat Skinny John anyway, and prepares Gretel as well, roasted in the oven. And here the story reaches its most critical point. Either the children kill the witch, or they are eaten. There is no third option. There is no negotiation. There is no middle ground. It's pure survival. The witch tells Maria to prepare the oven, big, hot enough to bake a girl. And Maria, for the first time, has aged through her own cunning. She pretends she doesn't know how to check the temperature. She asks the witch to demonstrate, and when the old woman leans over the oven, Maria pushes her, and a witch burns, dies in the very flames she prepared to devour the girl. This is the most important moment in the entire story. It's not a magical victory. It's not an external rescue. It's autonomy. Maria saving herself and her brother through courage and intelligence. In developmental psychology, this is the moment of individuation. A child finally separates from the devouring maternal figure, choosing their own life over a symbiosis that kills. But notice, Maria doesn't just escape. She kills. She uses the witch's torture device against herself. The oven in which she was supposed to be roasted becomes her oppressor's tomb. It's even poetic justice, but it's also something darker. It's the discovery that to survive toxic relationships, sometimes you need to stop being too nice and become more resilient to them. Have you ever had to do this? Have you ever had to cut off the relationship with someone who was plotting to control you, and that saved you from being destroyed? Have you ever had to use the same emotional weapons that held you back in a toxic relationship to finally defend yourself? When Maria burns a witch, she symbolically kills the devouring maternal energy. And a crucial detail, at that very moment, the stepmother in the house also leaves. It's not a coincidence. They are the same archetypal energy. The abandoning mother and the devouring mother are facing the same problem. Motherhood that does not nourish, but consumes. With the witch dead, Juan was freed. The children explore the house and find treasures, pearls, precious stones. They fill their pockets with the accumulated riches of all the previous victims. These treasures represent something disturbing. Everything a witch has stolen from other children over the years. They are a bloody legacy of a predatory system. When you defeat your oppressors, you inherit the power they gained to oppress you. The question remains, what do you do with this power? Bury him and put an end to this cursed inheritance, or continue perpetuating it? You can end this now. Hansel and Gretel carry the treasures, but they also bear the mark of those who survived. They carry the memory of having nearly been devoured. They carry the guilt of having been killed. Because killing a witch isn't a neutral act. It's necessary, but it leaves scars. Do you recognize this ambivalence? When you finally break free from a toxic relationship, there's a breakup, but there's also guilt. There's sadness. There's still a lot to work through, for what could have been and wasn't. The children begin their journey back. And here something strange emerges. A river that was not there on the way. There is no bridge. There is no boat. It is a symbolic barrier. It's the definitive separation between the witch's world and the world of the house. Between a devoured childhood and a conquered autonomy. They ask a duck for help. And Maria, wisely, realizes they can't climb up together. The duck can't support the weight. They have to go through one at a time. A metaphor is perfect. Growth doesn't happen in pairs. Each person needs to make their own journey. Each person needs to carry their own weight. When they finally cross paths, they arrive home to discover that their stepmother has died. Only their father awaits them, filled with regret. And with the witch's treasures, they live happily. But this happy ending hides more complex truths. They come back, but they are no longer the same children who came. They return with treasures, with power, with the knowledge of having survived the worst. With witch's blood on their metaphorical hands, their father receives them, alone. Their stepmother died when a witch died, as if they were connected by an invisible thread. And the father who consented to the abandonment, who chose his own survival over the lives of his children. He's there, repentant, happy to be back. But there's something disturbing about this happy ending. The children return rich, capable, dangerous. They killed to survive. They learned that love can be a trap. They discovered that even those who feed you can want to devour you, and that's no small thing. Is the father really happy to have them back? Or are you relieved that they now bring wealth? Or perhaps afraid of the children who returned with the eyes of those who had known death? The story doesn't answer, but the question remains. Can you go back home after changing so much? Can you have a healthy relationship with someone who once abandoned you? Hansel and Gretel's answer seems to be yes, but with conditions. They return, but not as dependent children. They return as equals, with their own resources, with negotiating power. He no longer needs his father's food. He has enough treasures to feed him for a lifetime. And maybe this is the only way to have a healthy relationship with toxic parents, when you no longer need them, when you can choose to be present but not out of necessity but out of choice. Have you reached that point yet? Have you returned to your family of origin not as a child seeking approval, but as an adult who could leave at any moment? It's a scary freedom, because it means you survived, that you grew up, that you are no longer a hostage, but it also means you carry scars, that you know hunger, that you know what it's like to be discarded, that you've learned that even candy stores can be traps. Hansel and Gretel live happily ever after, but their happiness is not naive. It's the happiness of those who survived, of those who knew the dark and chose the light, of those who were almost devoured and chose to live. The story ends, but the questions remain. What do you do when you're hungry and have inherited it from home? How do you feed yourself without falling into the traps of those who promise abundance but charge your soul? How do you return to your family without becoming a helpless child again? How do you carry which treasures without becoming one? Hansel and Gretel is not a story about children lost in the forest. It's a survival manual for anyone who grew up in a house that didn't feed, but only drained. It's about discovering that the one who should have cared for you was the one who first abandoned you, that the one who should have nourished you was the one who tried to devour you. It's about a journey of being cast out, almost consumed, and finally finding the strength to eliminate what oppresses you. But it's also about the costs of that survival, because you didn't emerge unscathed from being nearly devoured. You didn't return the same after facing death to survive. You didn't forget the hunger you felt at home. You didn't easily forgive those who abandoned you in the forest. You carry this, like Hansel and Gretel carried the witch's treasures. Wealth mixed with trauma, power mixed with pain, freedom mixed with scars. And the question this story asks isn't, have you been abandoned? Because almost all of us have been abandoned in some way. The question is, what did you do with this abandonment? Have you been lost in the forest, waiting for someone to save you? Have you fallen into the candy house of relationships where salvation was a prison? Are you still caged, being fattened by someone you love so that you consume yourself? Or have you ever pushed a witch into the oven? Have you ever killed the love-devouring versions they learned? Have you ever crossed the river back, once, carrying your own weight? Hansel and Gretel taught something no conventional therapy can. Sometimes to survive, you need to use the same weapons as your oppressor, not literally, but symbolically. Eliminate the fantasy that your family will change. Rethink the hope that the one who abandoned you will finally choose you. Change the vision of a hungry child inside you who still waits for crumbs of love. And when you do, when you finally grow through the pain, you discover something both frightening and liberating at the same time. You don't need a candy house anymore. You can build your own. You can choose your own food. You can decide who gets in and who stays out. You're no longer a lost child. You're an adult who knows the way back, and who can choose not to return. Or return only when you want to, not when you have to. And maybe that's the only way to live happily after being Hansel or Gretel, knowing you survived the worst, that you eliminated your monsters, that you crossed your river. And if you ever need to return to the forest, you already know, bring stones, not crumbs. And if you find a candy store, ask the price before taking a bite. Because now you know, everything has a price and every abundance has a cost, and you're no longer willing to pay with your life. If this story touched the hungry child that still lives inside you, if you met your own forest, your own witch, your own home that never really fed, subscribe to this channel now. Activate the bell so you don't miss the next stories that will show you the way back, not to your parents' house but to yourself. Share this video with anyone you know who's still lost in the woods, with anyone who still believes in candy houses, with anyone who needs to hear that it's time to push the witch into the oven and finally return home. But this time as an adult who can choose to stay or go. In the comments, tell me, what was your candy house? What promise of abundance imprisoned you? Have you killed your witch yet? Or are you still caged, being fattened up for food? When was the last time you came home not because you had to, but because you chose to? I'm here, reading every word, honoring every hungry survivor from home. And always remember, you are no longer a child abandoned in the forest. You are the adult who knows the way back, who carries treasures from battles won, who knows the difference between true hunger and emotional hunger, and that can finally feed itself, without needing crumbs from anyone. Until the next story, until the next crossing, until you discover that the home you were always looking for was yourself.